Y'all, she exposed everything. But nobody, not Bravo, not the blogs, not the fans who thought they'd seen every scandal under the sun, was prepared for the moment Kaela Tucker walked into that studio, sat down, and finally told the world what had been haunting her for years. This wasn't some petty family disagreement. This wasn't another Bravo meltdown. This was a daughter exposing the kind of emotional boundary crossing that shakes a family from the inside out. Her voice cracked before she even spoke. The cameras were rolling, the lights were burning hot, and Kaela whispered the words that made the entire room freeze. Something changed. His behavior wasn't a father's behavior anymore. Suddenly, the entire internet stopped breathing. She talked about the late-night calls that made her uneasy, the private one-on-one moments that felt too close, the conversations that crossed lines no parent should ever cross, and the tone that made her question whether she was being treated like a daughter or something else entirely. You could feel her heartbreak spilling out of the screen. She said she tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself she was imagining it, tried to keep the peace. But the messages kept coming. The compliments became different. The attention became personal. And the connection he kept pushing for felt nothing like family. Then Kaela looked straight into the camera and dropped the sentence that shattered the Bravo universe. I didn't feel safe anymore. Silence. Shock. An explosion across the internet. Because whatever Todd Tucker thought he was doing, Kaela is done protecting him. Y'all thought this story was done. You thought the Bravo universe had already seen its darkest twists. But what Kaela Tucker just revealed, what she finally said after years of silence, has turned every fan, every blogger, every quiet observer into a witness to a kind of emotional chaos nobody was prepared to face. Because this isn't about a divorce, or money, or custody, or reality TV manipulation. This is about a daughter who reached her breaking point after feeling lines blur in ways that no daughter should ever have to question. When Kaela sat down in that chair, the air changed. Even the crew felt it. Her hands were shaking so hard she couldn't even adjust her mic. You'd think she was about to read a statement about a business dispute or a childhood resentment. But the moment she exhaled, that one shattered breath, everybody in that room knew something far heavier was about to drop. She began quietly, like her voice was carrying the weight of 2 decades. You grow up trusting someone, she said. You grow up believing they're your protector, your shield. But then one day, something changes. And you can't unsee it. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody dared speak. Kaela continued, her eyes locked on the table in front of her, as if speaking directly into the past. She explained how she had always tried to maintain peace, tried to not create problems, tried to stay invisible, because that's what children of complicated families learn to do, disappear so everyone else stays comfortable. But then she slowly looked up, and that's when the tremble started in her bottom lip. But suddenly, she whispered, I wasn't comfortable anymore. Not around him. Those 5 words dropped like a grenade. She described moments, not physical, not explicit, nothing illegal, but emotionally heavy, confusing, deeply uncomfortable. Late-night calls with a tone that didn't feel fatherly. Private moments that felt too intimate, too charged, too pointed. Compliments delivered in a way that made her chest tighten instead of warm. Attention that didn't feel protective, but intrusive. Questions that felt personal, too personal. Comments that blurred the line between parental concern and something she couldn't define. And she said she didn't understand it at first. She thought she was imagining it. Gaslighting herself, telling herself she was dramatic, oversensitive, mistaken. But then the frequency increased. The tone changed. The check-ins came at odd hours. The invitations to meet alone became more frequent. The way he looked at her sometimes made her skin crawl with confusion, not fear, confusion. Because nothing about it felt like the warmth of family. It felt like expectation, like pressure, like a closeness she didn't ask for. The camera zoomed in as her eyes filled with tears she kept trying to swallow back. You don't want to think something is wrong. You don't want to even let yourself consider it, she said. So you pretend. You smile. You nod. You act like everything's normal, even when something in your body is screaming that it isn't. Her voice cracked and fans watching from around the world felt their stomachs twist. She said it began gradually. First, extra compliments about her appearance, her style, her maturity, delivered with a tone that didn't sit right. Then, moments of exaggerated praise that felt oddly personal instead of parental. Conversations where the emotional energy shifted in a way she couldn't articulate. Moments where he'd sit too close. Moments where he'd lower his voice too much. Moments where she felt like he forgot he was supposed to be her father. And she tried to ignore it. She tried to act normal. She tried to brush off the tension as stress, pressure, exhaustion, anything else. But the line kept shifting. And she said she started to feel trapped inside a relationship dynamic she never consented to, never agreed to, and never knew how to escape. I felt like I couldn't breathe, she said softly. Like I was being pulled into something that didn't feel right. Something that didn't belong to a father-daughter relationship. She explained that she pulled back, tried to create distance, tried to stop the uncomfortable conversations politely. She changed her tone. She reduced the calls. She declined one-on-one invites. And every time she stepped back, he stepped forward emotionally, as if the shift in their dynamic was something he couldn't let go of. She wiped her eyes and continued. He would say things like, "I just want us to be close. Closer than before. Closer on every level." And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to know what that meant. The internet lost its mind. Comments exploded. Blogs crashed. Fans were DMing each other screenshots asking, "What is she implying? Why does this sound so wrong? Why didn't she say anything earlier? Where was everyone when she was dealing with this?" Kaela said she tried to talk to someone once, a friend, but the shame drowned her words before they came out. Because how do you say, "My father is making me uncomfortable," without feeling like the entire world will accuse you of lying? How do you explain emotional boundaries being violated when there's no physical evidence to show? How do you justify your pain when it's invisible? So she stayed quiet. Until one night, the night that broke her, when he said something that made her freeze in place. He told her he wanted her to trust him with parts of herself she didn't share with anyone, and the way he said it felt nothing like a father offering emotional support. It felt like an invitation she never asked for and never wanted to understand. And that was the moment she said she realized she was no longer imagining things. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't misreading him. My body reacted before my mind did. I felt panic. I felt small. I felt unsafe. And I knew I had to get away. She said she spent months carrying the weight alone, replaying every uncomfortable moment, questioning every boundary crossed, blaming herself for not speaking up sooner. But eventually the silence started killing her. So she decided to speak. "This is not revenge. This is not drama. This is my truth," she said firmly. "And I'm done pretending it didn't happen." She said she didn't want to destroy him. She didn't want to hurt anyone. She didn't want to be the center of headlines or gossip. She just wanted her heart back, her safety back, her peace back. But her truth was too heavy to stay hidden. The final line of part 1 seared through the internet like fire. "I am finally choosing myself. Even if it means losing him." The world stopped. Fans screamed. Bravo Twitter exploded. Blogs posted hourly updates. Because Kaela Tucker didn't just break the silence, she shattered an entire family narrative people thought they understood. And this is only the beginning. The internet didn't sleep after Kaela's confession. Nobody blinked. Nobody scrolled casually. It felt like the entire Bravo world was trapped inside a storm they never saw coming. Fans were frozen between confusion, heartbreak, anger, disbelief, and the one burning question: what happened after Kaela pulled away? What did Todd do when he realized she wasn't responding the way he expected? And why did things spiral so fast, so quietly, so devastatingly? Because according to people close to her, and later confirmed by Kaela herself, the moment she tried to distance herself, the entire dynamic shattered like glass. It began with silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Not the kind a father gives when he's hurt. The kind that feels like punishment. Like pressure. Like a demand to explain herself without him ever saying a word. She said the silence felt louder than any confrontation. It felt intentional. It felt like he was waiting for her to break first. She said the tension in the house shifted overnight. Every room felt smaller. Every conversation felt like walking through fog. And there were moments, dark, complicated moments, where she felt like he was analyzing her, searching her face for guilt she shouldn't have had to carry. She described it like living under a microscope she never asked to step into. But then the silence cracked. He started sending messages again. Not inappropriate. Not physical. Nothing illegal. But emotionally charged, weighted, layered with meanings she never understood and didn't want to decode. Messages about trust. Messages about closeness. Messages about fixing what they lost. Messages that made her chest tighten because she didn't know what part he wanted her to fix, the father-daughter bond, or the strange emotional line he kept drifting toward. One message in particular stayed with her for months. She didn't read it out loud during the interview, but she described it with a kind of trembling breath that made the world lean in. He said he felt like I didn't appreciate the connection he was trying to build. That I was shutting him out. That he wanted us to have a relationship people couldn't question. And I didn't know what that meant anymore. I didn't know what he wanted it to look like. She said she reread the message 100 times, hoping the meaning would change, soften, clarify. But the discomfort only grew. The ambiguity, the emotional pull, the intensity, it all felt like a boundary she was being asked to cross with him, even if he never said it outright. And that's when she began pulling back harder. She stopped answering immediately. She kept her replies short. She made excuses to avoid private moments. She tried to keep conversations surface level. And every time she took a step backward, the atmosphere thickened like storm clouds gathering over her head. She said Todd became more attentive, checking on her more, asking where she was, what she was feeling, why she seemed distant. And each question felt less like concern and more like surveillance. She didn't know how to explain her fear without sounding cruel. She didn't know how to describe her discomfort without breaking the entire family open. So she stayed quiet, even as her anxiety grew. But the real breaking point came one night when Todd approached her with a long, emotional talk, the kind you'd expect between a couple in crisis, not a father and daughter. He wanted to know why she was withdrawing, why she had become cold, why she wasn't being open with him, why she kept creating distance when he was only trying to get closer. She said the conversation went on for nearly an hour, circling around the same emotional tension she didn't know how to escape. And she didn't know what to say. She didn't want to accuse him of anything. She didn't want to assume. She didn't want to hurt him. But she did want space. She needed it like oxygen. And when she asked for it gently, nervously, almost whispering, the shift in his face was instant. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't aggressive. But he looked wounded. Deeply. Personally. As if she had rejected something more intimate than a parent's affection. As if she had broken a bond he believed they were building. And that was when she knew the emotional line between them had fractured beyond repair. She said after that conversation, he kept trying in small ways to pull her back, and subtle comments about how distant she'd become, reminders that family should be close, jokes about how she was acting like a stranger. And each remark felt less like affection and more like an emotional tug-of-war she didn't want to participate in. She said she considered telling Kandi, but the guilt crushed her. How could she walk into her stepmother's room and say, "Something feels wrong"? How could she articulate a feeling that had no physical proof, no visible evidence, no clean explanation? She said she didn't want to seem dramatic or ungrateful or manipulative. She didn't want to spark a war inside the house. She didn't want to be the reason their family cracked open. So she stayed silent. But her silence didn't protect her. It suffocated her. She said she started spending more time outside the house. More time alone. More time creating excuses not to be around him. More time pretending everything was fine on the outside, while the inside of her chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. She described nights lying awake, replaying conversations she didn't want to remember, analyzing tones she didn't want to interpret, fighting a knot in her stomach that refused to loosen. She said she kept trying to convince herself she was wrong, that he didn't mean anything by it, that she was being too sensitive, that she was projecting. But the discomfort wouldn't leave. Everything intensified when Todd began subtly questioning her distance. He'd make comments like, "Why are you avoiding me?" or "You don't trust me anymore," or "We used to be closer." And those words stung because they blurred the emotional boundary even further. They sounded like questions a partner might ask, not a parent. And Kaela knew that if she didn't escape the emotional pressure soon, she would break. The moment she made the decision to leave, the moment she packed her things quietly and slipped out of the house without creating a scene, she said it felt like finally breathing after months underwater. But the guilt followed her. The fear followed her. The confusion followed her. And the silence between them grew even darker. She didn't speak to him for weeks. Not out of hatred, not out of revenge, but out of sheer emotional exhaustion. She needed space to think, to heal, to understand her feelings without being pulled back into the emotional fog she had been drowning in. And when he reached out again, gently, politely, almost too calmly, asking why she had left so abruptly, she knew the cycle was beginning again. The closeness, the questions, the emotional intensity she couldn't handle. That was when she realized she couldn't live like this anymore. She needed to speak. She needed the world to know. And she needed to reclaim her own reality before the guilt drowned her again. Her final words in part 2 hit harder than anything she said before. "I wasn't running away from him. I was running back to myself." And just like that, the world realized Kaela Tucker's story wasn't about destruction. It was about liberation. And the fallout was only just beginning. The world had barely processed Kaela's escape when the final blow landed, the moment she stepped back into the spotlight, not as a daughter hiding behind guilt, fear, or shame, but as a woman ready to confront the emotional storm she carried alone for years. And this time, she wasn't trembling. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't shrinking. She walked into that room like someone who had survived something invisible, something confusing, something twisted just enough to haunt her but not enough to be named. And that made her story even more devastating. The cameras were already rolling. Her hands no longer shook. She wasn't hiding behind fragile pauses. She exhaled once, heavy, controlled, final, and the world leaned in. Because everyone knew part 3 wasn't going to be a recap. It was the confrontation the entire Bravo universe had been waiting for. She began with the words nobody expected. "I didn't come here to destroy him. I came here to set myself free." That single sentence sent shockwaves across the room. And then she started revealing the aftermath, the part everyone forgets happens once you step away from a person who's been emotionally entangling you for years. She said the distance didn't fix anything at first. It made everything louder. She replayed every moment, every conversation, every half-sentence that wrapped around her like vines she never saw growing. She talked about the confusion that spiraled into guilt, the guilt that turned into panic, the panic that turned into numbness. She said she would wake up at night feeling like someone was watching her, even though she was alone. Not because he ever followed her, not because he ever threatened her, but because emotional traps don't disappear just because you walk away. They live inside your mind. They whisper questions. Questions like, was it really that bad? Am I overreacting? What if I misunderstood? What if I hurt him for no reason? She said the worst part wasn't the discomfort itself, it was the doubt that almost convinced her nothing happened at all. She admitted that even after leaving, she kept checking her phone, kept reading old messages, kept wondering if she was the one who misunderstood everything. Trauma has a way of twisting reality until you don't know if you're the victim or the villain. And she was stuck in that loop for months. But the turning point came the day she finally opened up to someone, not family, not friends, but a therapist. She said she walked into that room thinking she'd sound dramatic, imagining the therapist rolling her eyes. But after she described everything, the tone, the closeness, the pressure, the emotional intensity, the therapist didn't flinch. Instead, the therapist said something that changed everything. You were emotionally cornered. Kaela broke down when she heard that. She cried for hours. Because finally, someone gave her language for something she could never name. Not abuse. Not manipulation. Not misconduct. It was emotional cornering, being pulled into an intimacy you didn't ask for, didn't consent to, didn't want, but felt obligated to navigate because the person pulling you is someone you're supposed to trust. She said that moment unlocked her entire journey. It made every memory make sense. And it also made her understand how deeply this had scarred her. So she decided to reclaim her voice. And that's when she decided to speak publicly, not to hurt Todd, not to expose him, not to humiliate him, but to take back the emotional power she felt she lost. She said she rehearsed what she was going to say for weeks. But the moment she stepped on set, her truth poured out like a flood. And she didn't stop. She talked about the blurred lines. She talked about the uncomfortable intensity. She talked about feeling watched emotionally, not physically. She talked about every moment she questioned her own mind. And she talked about how long it took her to breathe again. Then she revealed the message she never shared publicly, the message that finally shattered her silence. I just want us to be close. Close on every level. She said she read that line 10 times and felt her soul drop into her stomach. Not because it was horrifying, not because it was explicit, but because the emotional weight behind it was too familiar, too heavy, too wrong in a way she didn't know how to explain. That sentence pushed her out the door. That sentence made her leave. She said she told the world now because she kept thinking about how many people live through similar invisible emotional chaos and never speak because they have no proof except their feelings. She said she wanted to give language to people who cry silently at night, not knowing why they feel unsafe in relationships that should feel safe. She said she wanted to help people trust themselves again. But the most heartbreaking moment came when they asked her what she would say if Todd ever confronted her about this. Her voice softened, and for the first time, her eyes didn't look angry or afraid. They looked tired, worn down, defeated. I would tell him I'm not angry. I'm not hateful. I'm not trying to ruin him. I just want him to understand how his behavior affected me. I want him to understand that I wasn't rejecting him. I was protecting myself. The room was silent. Even the cameraman looked away. She continued. I needed space because I didn't feel like his daughter anymore. I felt like something else. Something undefined. And I didn't know how to survive that confusion without breaking myself. Those words hit harder than any accusation. Because she wasn't calling him a monster. She wasn't calling him abusive. She wasn't labeling him with anything. She was describing a feeling millions of people have experienced but never talk about. And she ended her message with something that sent the entire internet into meltdown. I still love him. Not the way he wanted. Not the way he acted. But the way a daughter loves a complicated father. I just can't lose myself to protect him anymore. The world cracked in half. Fans cried. Blogs exploded. Comment sections turned into warfare between people defending her and people defending him. But one thing was undeniable. Kaela spoke with the kind of emotional clarity people wait their whole lives to find. And in that moment, the faceless journalist voice inside every viewer whispered the same thing. This wasn't a scandal. This wasn't a takedown. This was a girl rebuilding herself from the ruins of a relationship she didn't understand. Echoed like thunder across the Bravo universe. I didn't break the family. I just stopped breaking myself. The fallout would change everything. This is where everything shatters. This is where the story stops being a whisper in the shadows and becomes a scream echoing across every corner of the internet. Because now that Kaela has spoken, now that the truth has crawled its way out of the silence she carried for years, The world can never go back to pretending everything was fine. She didn't just open a wound, she exposed an entire emotional war that no one saw coming. And whether people like it or not, the fallout is already rewriting the story everyone thought they understood. You heard her voice break. You felt her pain spill through the screen. You watched her take back the pieces of herself she lost in confusion, guilt, pressure, and silence. And if her courage shook you even a little, then you already know this moment is bigger than entertainment, bigger than Bravo, bigger than gossip. This is the kind of truth that forces families, fans, and entire communities to ask the questions they've been too afraid to face. So don't scroll away from this. Don't pretend you didn't feel it. Don't let her story disappear like every other trending headline. Because today, Kaela stood alone. Tomorrow, she doesn't have to. If you felt her strength, share it. If you saw your own pain in her eyes, amplify it. If you believe she deserved to be heard long before now, make sure the world hears her again. Comment. Share. Speak. Don't let the silence win this time. Because the truth is out now. And once the truth starts burning, nothing and no one can put it back in the dark. The story isn't ending here. It's beginning where her voice finally rose. And your voice is next.